You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
T-Wolves drop game one of the in-season tourney. Final score versus Portland, 122-108. Yeah, you heard that right. What's going on back in the lab? Back at another T-Wolves postcast episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Your team every day. Jack Borman side by side. Give him a follow at grborman13. Plenty to break down tonight, Jack, including game one of the Wolves in-season tourney. What adjustments need to be made tomorrow night in game two of their back-to-back. But first, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Game Time. Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That's $20 off your first purchase with code LOCKEDONNBA. All right, man, Wolves come out, dude, sloppy as all heck in the first quarter, to put it lightly. Turnovers all over the place. They just looked out of sync, top to bottom, right from the jump. They had to dig themselves out of a big hole early on. They tried chipping away little by little, but in the end, they could never really close that lead to less than 10 points. Portland win like Hall of Fame mode. They just couldn't miss from three. Their bench went off 62 points. They had season highs in all kinds of statistics I'm sure you'll get into. But where do you want to start, man? This was ugly. What's your A topics first and foremost?
Yeah, I mean, right there with the Timberwolves turnover problem. I mean, we'll get into it, but I mean, they had at least 5 turnovers in the first, third, and fourth quarters, and it's just tough to win a basketball game when that's the case. But yeah, tonight for Portland, no DeAndre Ayton tonight, and Denny Avdia came off the bench. So 2 of the starters from the previous matchup did not play or came off the bench, and in Ayton's case did not play. He was out with a finger injury. And so you had Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe, Jeremy Grant, Tumani Kamara, and Donovan Clingan starting tonight. And then Simons leaves, midway through the first quarter with an odd chest injury that we didn't really see how he suffered that. And so if you're telling me you're down 2 of your probably 3 or 4 best guys in this game against a team that is coming off a 45-point loss at home to Memphis on Sunday, in between your previous matchup with them and this matchup, probably feel pretty good. But not only do you lose, you get blown out in NBA Cup play, where point differential is a key tiebreaker. And so the Timberwolves now pretty much have no chance of being able to compete in this thing, which is a bummer, just because I think there are more juice to these games. And I think fans do get a little bit more excited, whether half of that is just joking and, kind of going along with the bit versus, actually being more invested. I do think there's a little bit more to it. And so that was really unfortunate. And I think the fact that Portland's bench had 4 guys in double figures and the Wolves team only had 3 as a whole, I think is a pretty decent summary of how this one went. But again, like the Wolves offensive identity to this, or excuse me, their team's identity to this point, which has been a fairly weak one, considering that this team has won some games in different ways so far this season, hasn't necessarily been able to rely on one consistent, theme throughout the course of the year. But the formula for the most part has been, being a really strong offensive execution team. They were 8th in offensive rating coming into this season after being in the low 20s last year. And then, their opponents making the fewest 3-pointers per game in the NBA at just under 11 per game. But that formula is not going to work on a night when you're turning the ball over like crazy and you allow wide open threes. And the game just became a math equation in terms of Portland taking way more shots. It's tough to win an NBA game when, an opponent is out shooting you. Portland, I believe, had 11 more shot attempts than the Timberwolves tonight. That's not very good. They gave up 10 offensive rebounds for 12 second chance points. It really felt like, when Portland's offense was really rolling, especially in that second quarter, that every single time Portland missed, there was an offensive rebound, kick out 3, boom.
Frustrating.
And that's just really deflating for a team. And it's hard to kind of dig deep inside and find the energy that you need to dig out of those holes when the points that your opponent is scoring come in that deflating fashion. And again, like Portland scored 25 points off of 23 Wolves turnovers. It's way too many in both categories. And I just think it reeked of an unprepared and unprofessional effort on both ends of the floor. And when you consider how many veterans this team has, and how many guys who really, for the most part, do a good job of showing up every night and being ready to go, it was unfortunate. And this is what we talked about last week on the postcast on Friday night, saying, hey, this Portland team is going to beat you if you don't show up, because there's a lot of offensive talent on this team. And did I necessarily think that it would manifest itself in the way that it did tonight? Not quite on that level when you consider that Ayton was out and then Simons was out. But you got to give Portland credit for the way that they stepped up without their best player and without, one of their other best guys in Ayton. They had 64 bench points, 4 guys in double figures. And I just think for the Wolves, like, the way that you get to that is, really what Chris Finch has lamented all year on the defensive side of the ball. They just haven't really, gotten into guys on the defensive perimeter. They haven't had the same defensive intensity. And when you struggle to contain the ball on the perimeter, I just think, you're going to get situations where it's much easier for guards to get into the paint and play 2 against 1 with Gobert inside, and that rolling big becomes more of a factor, like you saw with Rob Williams, had 19 points, 9 rebounds, 6 stocks in this game.
Yeah.
Not only is he being a factor in the pick and roll game, but then, if it's constantly against a spread floor, when you're not containing the ball, you're kicking the ball around, guys are having to fly around and worry about who's helping and who's helping the helper. You're just not in great rebounding spots, and then you open up the floodgates for guys to crash them all over the floor for offensive rebounds. So I think for the Wolves to try to get this thing back on the tracks tomorrow night, it all has to start with them taking more pride in defending the ball. And, I know that Karl Anthony Towns leaving does not really impact their ability to get down in a stance and guard. And Julius Randle is not so much worse of a defender than Karl Anthony Towns that Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels aren't, and Nikhil Alexander-Walker, Dante DiVincenzo at times, Mike Conley are not like getting in a stance and wanting to guard the ball. And that was a big part of the formula last year, and it just hasn't been there so far this season. And I think those guys got to look inside themselves and say, hey, man, we've had 2 pretty embarrassing losses in these last 2 games, and that's where it's got to start.
Yeah, Julius taking some heat, lot of venting and frustration in the comments. Appreciate everybody joining and venting with us tonight for sure. I know you kind of already touched on this, but how much did no DeAndre Ayton playing tonight? And then, like you said, Simmons left early in the first quarter too. So you got 2 guys who played last Friday in this matchup not playing tonight. I just wonder how much that maybe changed things as far as X's and O's goes, but like maybe it caught them off guard in some sort of way. I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching there, but I'm just trying to nitpick and find any answers I can, I guess.
Well, I mean, I just think no DeAndre Ayton meant more Rob Williams, and Rob Williams is very clearly this team's best big man. I mean, we were just a couple years removed from Rob Williams being hurt, and that's why the Celtics aren't winning the NBA title, to, Rob Williams being part of that Drew Holiday trade, as part of that Dame trade that we had, a little bit more than a year ago. And he was hurt last year with a knee injury, missed pretty much the entire season, and has been back now and is playing. He's a really, really good player. And so I think DeAndre Ayton is a pretty lazy player. You just have no idea what you're going to get from him night to night. He doesn't really take a whole lot of pride in the defensive end of the floor. And I just think that for someone like Rudy Gobert, who, for the most part, is a guy that plays really hard on every possession and does the little things on every possession like that, doing that against a guy that doesn't for most of the possessions that he's out there, that really adds up over the course of a game. But, when you're going up against a guy like Rob Williams, who's, wants to do that and wants to play with force and wants to be a factor and, make an impact every single possession that he's out there, I just think that really changes the calculus. I didn't really think that Donovan Clingan was very impactful on either end of the floor in this game, outside of his offensive rebounding. I think just his sheer mass and how much defensive attention it takes to just keep him off the offensive glass is something that certainly is a little bit different from what Ayton provides. I think being there up close and personal on Friday, you really get a sense for just how gigantic Donovan Clingan is. He makes Rudy Gobert look somewhat small. So I think that's really the only thing that changes, and maybe you don't have as much, short short roll stuff where, he's setting the screen, catching the ball around the free throw line and settling for a, mid-range jumper. You just don't really see that much with Klingon or with Rob Williams. But yeah, I was just more impressed with the way that they made up for not having Simons.
100. Yeah.
So
100%. Plenty more deep dive from this one. We got to talk about Josh Minot and the bench rotation too. I got a couple questions for you on that, plus some in-season tourney info. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, FanDuel's giving you a chance at a huge return with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed with your first $5 wager. When you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Again, $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Go check it all out over at FanDuel.com. Get in on some NBA future action while you're there. Anthony Edwards, MVP odds sitting at 8.5 to 1 right now as we speak. Still feels like some good value. It's all sitting up over at FanDuel.com. Again, check it all out over at FanDuel.com and get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed with your first $5 wager. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, I don't want to be over dramatic by any means, but like what's the identity, I get? What is the identity of this team? And I guess what looks the most different from last year and what still kind of looks the same? What still resembles the same T-Wolves we got last year?
Yeah, I just think it's their willingness to share the ball offensively and create a lot of, good 3-point opportunities. And that when this team can still generate 3-point looks, they knock them down at a fairly high clip. And I think when, you're looking at this game tonight and the Timberwolves, it's a down shooting night from 3 and they're shooting 37% from 3. Like that's still pretty darn good. And I think that that's something that we're going to see night to night is that even on nights when the Timberwolves defense isn't there, they're going to generally make enough threes where it's not going to feel like they're just out of it the whole game. And I mean, even the start of the fourth quarter, right? Naz Reid, you get 2 stops and then Naz Reid makes back-to-back threes and all of a sudden it's a 13-point game and you're right in that thing with 11 minutes to go against a really young team with, without the guy that you're used to having the ball in his hands in Simon. So I think that's going to be part of it for sure. And then what's different, I guess it's just the ball pressure. I don't think that Rudy Gobert has necessarily been able to have the same night to night impact because of that. I think on nights when the ball pressure has been better and he hasn't been asked to cover for, just turnstile defense on the perimeter, he's been able to be more impactful. He's been able to be more of a playmaker on the backside. And I also think too, that what's been different is, and where you do miss Karl Anthony Towns defensively, is that when Rudy Gobert would be asked to come out more in coverage, they would switch or he'd play more up at the level of the screen. I think you trusted him as a rebounder and as a rim protector a little bit more than Julius Randle. And so Rudy Gobert has been forced to play a much deeper drop so far this season. And sometimes when you're doing that, it rolls out a little bit more of a red carpet for guys to get into the top part of the paint and then spray the ball out for threes. If guys that are defending the shooters in the corners or the guy in the slot, aren't super attentive off the ball defensively. So I certainly think that in those areas, rotating to protect the rim, rebounding, and then, off ball awareness, Julius Randle really has not been as good as Karl Anthony Towns has been or was for the Timberwolves in that role. So I think that there's still going to be some adjustment that needs to happen. But again, it's just right now the Timberwolves, until they're able to find that level, just have to hope that they can make enough shots and that the offensive upgrade, I think that Julius Randle has been for what he's been able to help unlock and the higher 3-point volume a lot because of his playmaking. I think it's just, again, it's how much do you rely on offense and how much can you rely on this offense until the defense catches up to that? At least, I guess, more a defense that more closely resembles what we saw last season can kind of catch up to that and be more of the identity. But again, like, I think if this team is unable to find that level defensively that they found last season or something, maybe just a slight step below that. it's going to be really tough for them to contend with what they've seen in the West so far this season. If what we've seen from Dallas keeps up, if what we've seen from Phoenix keeps up, they look like a very different Phoenix team from last season. And even Golden State has looked tremendous so far this season with the where they've shared the ball and spread the floor. So they've got a long way to go defensively, but they've proven that they can do it. Again, this team went to the Western Conference Finals last season. I don't think that you can discount that. Yeah. And again, I still just don't think it's time to overreact wildly to a game in the early part of November. And there's going to be some tough games, no question about it. And you don't like when it happens 2 games in a row. But at the end of the day, you try to hold the guys accountable for how they performed in this game and trust that they come back, they get another opportunity to do so and respond tomorrow night. And I think the way that this team responds tomorrow night after 2 really tough losses and disappointing ones at that on the second night of a back-to-back will tell you a lot about this team. And if they lose again tomorrow, then I think maybe you can have some larger conversations about what this thing is going to look like. But again, like they've got a soft schedule here for the next week and a half, 2 weeks. So, we could be sitting here in a week and a half, 2 weeks saying, man, that two game stretch may cost you. And you may look back at that, in April when you're a 4 seed instead of a 3 seed or a 4 seed instead of a 2 seed or something like that. But
yeah, that's true.
We'll see.
Quick 60 seconds just on this in-season tourney. Wolves are in West Group A. I know in Vegas, if you looked at the odds, they were the favorite in this group, or they were at least heading in before tonight. Who's the biggest challenge or roadblock, I guess, in their way? And also just kind of in general, what else do we need to know or remember about this tourney as it slowly unfolds? Give us the quick 60-second tutorial one last time for people at home still trying to grasp the whole concept, which is still relatively new.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is if you really want to win the thing, you've got to go undefeated in your group play games. And and then you advance to Vegas in the semis and then and then you've got an opportunity to go play and win the thing like we saw the Lakers did last season. But yeah, I think for the Wolves, it's pretty simple. They were in the easiest group in the West by far, in my opinion. You look at West Group C as an absolute gauntlet with Denver, Dallas, New Orleans, Golden State, Memphis. I know New Orleans is decimated by injury right now, but that's still a pretty tough group. And they could have drawn that and they didn't. They got by far, in my opinion, the easiest path. And against the worst opponent in that group, you come out and lay an egg like this. And that'll just about do it for the Timberwolves' hope of competing for this thing. So just kind of a bummer that you suck the fun out of it right away. But I think it'll also be fun to watch East Group B. I think is a kind of mid but fun collection of 5 teams with Milwaukee, Detroit, Miami, who had a crazy loss tonight because of a massive coaching blunder from future Hall of Famer.
Alley-oop inbound pass with 1 second left. Then what was the technical on? That was tied.
That was because Spoelstra tried to call a timeout that the Heat didn't have. Man. So a rare blunder from him. And then Toronto and Indiana in there. So that'll be kind of a fun group to monitor of just teams that I think can all kind of beat up on each other. But yeah, just kind of a bummer that they're out of it already pretty much.
Yeah, 100%. There is a lot of chatter in the comments about the bench, the rotation. Basically, you heard Jim Pete tonight on the broadcast talk about Finchie is essentially rolled with 8 guys, right, to start the season up to this point. That's eventually going to have to – he's going to have to pivot, right? He's going to have to involve more guys off the bench. What's your 2 cents on that? Because tonight you saw Nah get first quarter minutes. That was nice. Josh Minot, second quarter, making his first early game appearance. Where are you at as far as, I guess, his blueprint and game plan up to this point? And then – how close are we to we got to change it up? We got to switch it up. Is it just about getting fresh legs out there? What is it? What do they got to do? What's your 2 cents if you're the coach right now?
Well, I just think it's tough in the backcourt right now when you consider that you really have 3 guys that you would like to be able to start on most NBA teams in Conley, DiVincenzo, and Alexander Walker. But I'm going to pivot for a minute if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think another issue with this bench is that if 2 of Randall, Gobert, and Reed really do not play well, there's just not a ton of options for the Timberwolves. I think the only other option is that you take the guy that is playing well and hope that Jade McDaniels can scale up to the 4, and that you try to ride a small lineup that way. I think, again, tonight with Randall and Gobert being relatively non-factors, Randall just 9 points on 8 shots, didn't look comfortable on offense. Gobert didn't really impose his will on either end of the floor for consistent stretches. It's just tough to turn to anyone on the bench and say, hey, let's try to go to a spark and switch it up. I think, Finchie did a good job of riding Nikhil. Nikhil and Naz basically played for the final 19 minutes of this game, which is pretty crazy, but that's what happened. And I think being able to have 2 guys like that can provide that spark on both ends of the floor. You had Naz with 28 points and 17 shots tonight. Nikhil really just locked in defensively, and I think was the defensive spark that they needed to try to at least find something in this game, which was really important. And I think the nice thing about what you have in DiVincenzo and Nikhil and Mike is that you can just essentially ride whoever's been playing well. And I don't think there's any ego involved with those 3 guys. And I think, again, it was not a Dante night tonight. 3 points, 3 shots, 18 minutes, just didn't really look. And I think he had 2 or 3 turnovers as well that were pretty ugly in the lane on his drives. And so, again, it's just about riding the hot hand. Finchie did not do that in Miami or against Miami, and it essentially cost them the game with choosing Mike Conley over Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And again, tonight, I'm just glad that Finchie was willing to trust that hot hand in Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And without him, I think that they lose this game by 25 or 30 points instead of 14 points, just for the way that he kind of raised his teammates' collective competitiveness level. And yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's just the bummer in this situation right now is it's just what's the situation in which you're going to give Josh Minott more minutes? Like, are you going to take minutes away from
How
Randall?
do we get there?
Are you going to take minutes away from Randall against a team that he was phenomenal against 4 days ago? Or are you going to take minutes away from Gobert to give more minutes to Josh Minott? I think the easy answer is that you'd play Mike Conley fewer minutes on a night like tonight, and you play Rob Dillingham more. I think that's probably the only lever that you would pull. But again, like, when you consider that if you're going to take minutes away from Mike Conley, it's probably easier to give those to DiVincenzo or Alexander Walker first. It's just a tougher conversation. And I think, again, if you can get in more garbage time situations that we saw, on Friday against the Blazers and the game before that against Charlotte and Chicago, that, you can at least have some opportunity for Dillingham to get his feet wet and play well like he has. I think, now you're looking at a spot maybe tomorrow. It's not an NBA Cup game. Maybe you rest Mike Conley tomorrow and just say, hey, man, like, just take the day off, maybe get in the gym, shoot around, and just shoot a ton of threes and try to work out what he's been working out with his wrist. I think people are forgetting that he has a left wrist issue that he's been battling, and, didn't really make sense for him to get it surgically repaired or anything like that this summer. So I think, he kind of does need a little bit of slack. And I think he was so good for the Timberwolves for so long last season and played a lot more games than what they were anticipating he was able to play last year. I think people just I think Mike Conley was just like an expectation that he was going to be rock solid in every single game last year, and people took that for granted a little bit. And now that he's not playing well, everyone's just kind of sounding the alarm. Yeah. And I think Mike Conley deserves a little bit more slack than what people have been giving him. But again, when you make the move you do to go up and get Rob Dillingham, make that aggressive of a move. Yeah. Given their financial restraints, I understand why fans are wanting to see him play more, but I think if you're going to unleash him in regular rotation, I think he's a guy that you have to give a minimum of 15 minutes to, just to kind of let him cook a little bit and try to find a rhythm. I don't think he's a guy where you're going to be able to insert him for 4 minutes or 8 minutes in a game.
And feel that impact. He's got to marinate a little bit. Yeah.
And so that's why I think if you're looking for a lever to pull, I was Finchie, I would maybe sit Mike Conley tomorrow and say, Rob Dillingham, like, let's see what you got, because the guys that he's playing against, if Anthony Simons is ready to go tomorrow, probably unlikely considering the way that he checked out, but like Scoot Henderson is not a great defender.
Yeah.
Delano Banton is 6'9", so that would be a little bit of an interesting matchup, considering that Banton might be the guy that is tasked to guard Scoot, but again, or excuse me, tasked to guard Dillingham. But like Naz Reid was blowing by Banton for layups in this game, so maybe Dillingham would be able to do something similar, at least get into the paint and then kind of create some more flow and kick the ball to the corners and get some ball movement going. So I think that would be the lever that you'd pull if you're Finch.
That's a really good take and a great reminder about what's going on with Mike Conley as well. Again, easy to get frustrated, game after game like this. It's still early, a lot of ebbs and flows, a lot of NBA season left to be played, but a good reminder there and good points on both sides of the fence. And I, for one, would like to see Mike Conley get some rest tomorrow night and see what Rob Dillingham can do, like you said, with an actual chunk, right? A real, kind of let him get into a flow, I guess, of a game, not just a couple minutes here or there. I think that's what all these fans in the comment section tonight specifically are really clamoring for. A couple minutes left. We should talk about this Game 3 versus Portland on their back-to-back tomorrow night. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode also brought to us by BetterHelp. When your schedule is packed with work projects and more, it's easy to let your priorities start to slip, even when we know what makes us happy. But when you feel like you got no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy, they're more important than ever. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, it's time to give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. So simple. All you got to do, you fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Go visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Game 3 versus, guess who? The Blazers again. Same time, same place tomorrow. When you play a team this many times within a week like this, is there a challenge or an obstacle? Is it just showing up again and again? Is it learning on the fly and adapting to maybe what they do habit-wise night in, night out? What makes this challenge, I guess, so unique? Playing the same team 3 times within a week, because you just don't see that very often, if at all, during an NBA season.
Yeah, it's kind of like a playoff series in that, there's going to be some big variation in single game swings, right? I think you saw that Portland had 14 threes in the first 27 minutes of this game. Their season high was 15 coming into this game. I believe in the other game, I don't have it in front of me. What did they shoot? They shot 6 of 25 from 3 in the game on Friday, and then tonight they shoot 18 of 32. So I think you're just going to see some swings like that where just things can vary wildly from game to game. I think, again, like for this game, that you're going to see tomorrow night, it's going to be, look, Portland may not shoot like this tomorrow night, but they will win the game tomorrow night if the Wolves give them the same quality of looks because of their inability to contain the ball. And there's definitely been some clamoring in the chat tonight about how Randall's off ball awareness is nowhere near the level of Karl Anthony Towns, and like I totally hear that and agree with that, but at the same time, like I still think that replacing Karl Anthony Towns with Julius Randle, you should be able to go from first to like 6th in defense. That like Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is as good of a 4-man collection of defenders on a team that you're going to get. And then you throw in 2 pretty versatile and pretty rock solid defenders in Naz Reid and Dante DiVincenzo, and around that, like that's a group of 6 of your top 8 that are pretty solid defenders. Like there's just no excuse for right now their inability to contain the ball. Considering who's doing it. So I just think it's got to start with taking more pride on that end of the floor and being able to keep Portland's guards out of paint so that they aren't spraying the ball around and shooting as many threes. And if the Timberwolves can get the number of threes that Portland is shooting down to 32, which is what they only took 32 tonight. But if you can get that number below 30, getting into the mid to high 20s and force Portland to play in the mid range a little bit more. I think that'll probably be probably be a good recipe. But again, if you can contest responsibly without just doing flyby contests that result in 4-on-3s or 5-on-4s behind the play, I think that's got to be the way to do it. They did that for the most part in that first matchup. And again, the better you can contain the ball, the more of an impact Rudy Gobert is able to have, and the less you need guys to cover for him and rebound for him on the backside. And we saw that with him having 15 rebounds on Friday and him only having like 8 tonight. So
right. I think he had 3 going into the fourth quarter. I mean, it was pretty lackluster for most of that game for sure. Great breakdowns as always. Last 30 seconds, I'm going to give you all of it. Just empty the clip. Anything we missed? Any other shout outs? Any positive takeaways, notes, observations, anything for good or bad? Lay it all out there.
Yeah, I think Jaden McDaniels deserves a lot of credit too for what he was able to do tonight. He had 17 points. He made all 7 of his 2-point shot attempts, had 6 rebounds, 4 stocks. I think that was a great formula for how he can impact this game. Get out in transition and run, attack bad closeouts, and take good threes. You may only make one of your 2 or 3 that you're taking, but if you're taking the good shots, and defenses are going to respect you and close out to you, and then you're going to be able to attack closeouts, cut. Be active on the offensive glass, even if you're not getting offensive rebounds, but you're allowing other guys to fly in there and get there. I think that's really important. It was good to see Mike Conley knock down a couple of threes tonight in rhythm. I think hopefully we'll see a little bit more of that. And I think you're going to need more from Julius Randle on the offensive end of the floor. And you need more from Anthony Edwards setting a tone early in this game. Like Ant had 2 points in the first 18 minutes of this game. Yeah. And he certainly, came back from that well and had, 24 points in his final 18 minutes. But again, I think that if you're going to have anything, you want that flip to help him set a tone and kind of soften up the defense for everyone else. But again, you got to give a lot of credit to Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels for the way that they at least, carried the offense in the first half. I believe in the first half of this game, those 2 guys had 26 of the 53 points. Everyone else had 27 points on 7 of 22 shooting. So again, you'd like to see more from Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle in the first half, especially in the offensive end of the floor. But again, number one thing tomorrow, got to dig in and guard on the ball on the perimeter. And if they don't do that, they don't take pride in doing that, then, I think it's very fair for fans to be upset about that and really, I guess, call for more from this team on that end of the floor.
Yeah. And maybe let's give Mike a night off, because I'm telling you, if our comment section was coaching tomorrow night, you'd see Rob Dillingham in there. Half the comments, we got to get Rob in there.
And
great stuff.
And speaking of Rob, I just got a notification that Robert Williams is uncertain tomorrow. They don't know if he'll play on the second night of a back-to-back with that knee issue. And so if he's out, that could also be a part of the calculus for why Ayton didn't play tonight. Ayton's not playing tonight because Williams isn't playing tomorrow. So you're at least got it. Figuring that out. So we'll see what happens there.
Great stuff. As always, Wolves drop game 1 of tournament play. Final score versus Portland, 122-108. Very frustrating. They moved to 6-5 on the year. As always, huge shout out to all you guys, all you everydayers out there that always make us your first listen. We'll be doing these postcasts all season long. Make sure you make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Go follow all of Jack's work on X at JRBorman13. Wolves Blazers Part 3 up next. Same time, same place tomorrow night. But until then,